A lot of our modern worship songs have put ourselves at the center. All of a sudden, you're like, this is what he does for me.
Yes.
This is how I feel about it. And that is a dangerous place to be, because then it all of a sudden makes worship about what we're getting out of it, instead of really what it is what we are giving to God. We think that we know the definition of what is winning. I would have said, like, if I get to do what I want to do and do it well and succeed at it, if I get to do what my passion is and succeed at it, then I'm winning.
Yeah.
Now, I would say, just in maturity in the Lord, whatever I do, whether it's what I wanted to do or if it's what I didn't want to do, but I get to the end of it and I'm still sold out for Jesus and I have my integrity, then I feel like I've won.
Well, I want to welcome you to the Lead to Win podcast, where we help leaders win in the areas of life that matter the most. We're joined today by Natalie Grant, special guest. We're so glad to have you here. If you don't know, Natalie is a 5-time Dove Award winner for the Female Vocalist of the Year. She's a 9-time Grammy nominee. She's incredible. But you spent this weekend, we just finished, with you helping us lead services all weekend, leading worship for our team. Thank you so much for being here with us and helping us in that way. Pastor Jeff, I know you're passionate about helping leaders win, and having a leader like Natalie come in and give her experience and her understanding. This is something that really is important to you.
Well, we were talking about it. I love preaching and I love the things that go with what I do, but I'm passionate about coaching people and helping them win. And I think sometimes what a coach does is they give you permission to prioritize stuff that matters, but maybe you don't know that it's that important to you, and to prioritize things that you'll care about later. So I was just honestly particularly refreshed by you coming here, because I think those are amazing things. God's done it all. The awards and the songs that we love. I said this, we were at a conference and I had the honor of coming out after she led this amazing worship set that everyone was moved by. And I said this having never really met her, but I honored her in front of everybody by saying, I love that you wrote songs, you sing songs. There's been this emphasis, especially recently, about Jesus. How did that happen? Was that intentional, that you ended up with just this whole collection of songs? And then I decided I was going to have her come to our church and do that, because why should I say that to a bunch of other people?
Right.
Our church loved having you here, and it's because not just the songs or the music, it's also your heart for the local church. I want to talk a little bit about that. But tell us a little about your experience at Milestone, first time.
First of all, knowing you not for a long time, but I can tell that those are your passions, because I've been around your team all weekend, who are a bunch of winners. Literally, I mean that. You can tell they're passionate about what they do. You can tell they're well led, because you can tell a lot when you come into a church and the people that are serving don't seem exhausted. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Sometimes we can all get tired in what we're doing, because church is a lot and it takes a lot. It takes a lot of our energy. But when you are around somebody and you're 4 services in and they are still just as excited, and they're backstage saying, come on, we're giving it everything we have for this next one. And I'm like, they're the same in service 4 as they were in service 1.
Yeah.
And that tells me everything I need to know about how well they are led. Thank you for what you said about the Jesus-centric worship leading. Isn't that what worship is?
Exactly. You would think so.
It's a little bit concerning as a worship leader for so many years to be going, oh man, we have to bring worship leaders back to songs about Jesus. But it's funny, as you I think about songs that have lasted past the test of time, right? Hymns. You think about A Mighty Fortress Is Our God.
Right.
God is the center of the song. Great is Thy Faithfulness. How Great Thou Art. We're talking about songs that have been around for 150, 200 years. And those songs have one central theme.
There you go.
God, Jesus is the center. Somehow when you look at modern worship, which I love, but a lot of our modern worship songs have put ourselves at the center. All of a sudden you're like, this is what he does for me.
Yes.
This is how I feel about it. And that is a dangerous place to be, because then it all of a sudden makes worship about what we're getting out of it, instead of really what it is what we are giving to God. God is worthy of our praise, whether we feel like it in the moment, yet how kind is our God that something only He is worthy of, as we give it, He does allow it to be used for our good.
Do you think that some of that shift came from now we have marketing and now this is actually something that so when someone goes to write a song, they may not be they might actually have that as a big part of where their thought process is. What would be
we have the business of
what's
worship
the
now.
best felt need?
Right.
We have the
Let's sing
business
about
of
anxiety.
worship. Exactly. So
Right.
what's gonna sell? What's gonna
Yes.
hit the mark? What's gonna get played on the radio?
Yeah.
You know, what's gonna then all of a sudden it does, you realize, you know, our pastors, as we were writing songs at our church in Nashville, and their challenge to us was at this songwriting camp, we don't want we want one song where it doesn't mention you, I, me.
Wow.
There you go.
One time.
Yes.
It's only Jesus. And it was actually funny. That was hard.
Yeah.
It was all of a sudden like,
Right.
oh, wait a second. If I take me out of the equation, and all of a sudden you're like, okay, let's get into the Word. Let's make sure we have songs that are based on the Word
That's good.
Right.
and are theologically sound. And I think some of it you can look back over the last few years and go, oh, you know, I don't mean to bag on modern
Right,
worship
yeah.
because it's a beautiful thing, but the business of worship and the act of worship are
Right. That's
are
really good,
two
right?
different
There's a
things.
difference between a
Yeah.
genre of music
Yes.
and something that's an action or a posture that we
Yes.
have before God. That's
Yes,
a really
which is
great
music's
insight.
only a part of.
Yes.
It's not
Yeah.
the whole, right?
Right. But it is a big part of it.
It's a big part of it.
Well, I'm glad that the two of you are together, and for people watching, you know, the intentionality with which both of you lead. And when a worship leader and a pastor are talking together and thinking about the dynamic of your relationship, because I really think it's one of the most important relationships in a church. Pastor Jeff, can you talk a little bit about this relationship and how thinking, not just go out there and sing songs, whatever songs you like, but working together, thinking about how those songs create a culture in the church and really shape the values of what the people in the church actually believe. Help us understand how that works.
Well, and you know, culture eats strategy for breakfast, right?
Yeah.
So you can have the best lights and the best songs, but the culture. So you were speaking about our culture and you making a big connection with Betsy, who had some recording contracts, was kind of on her way, showed up at a church I was pastoring in the middle of West Texas. We really needed help. And I said to her, you're not going to sing any, and I needed someone who could sing.
Yeah.
And I was like, you're not singing anything for 6 months. I'm going to be your pastor. I
Wow.
became her pastor that day because she knew that I wanted the best for her and her family.
Yes.
Her husband became our youth pastor. And it wasn't about, I wanted more for them than I wanted
Yes.
from them. Right.
Beautiful.
And that's why I still 24, 25 years later, she's
still
still
here.
with me.
Yes.
Right. Because
Yes.
and I think what's really tragic is I end up in rooms, and I have a heart for pastors. That's why we do this podcast to help them win. They haven't had conversations with their worship leader.
Yes.
They don't feel like you are the
Yes.
chief worship leader.
Yes.
And then
Yes.
how do you, why is there so much separation between the pastors and the worship leaders? You're now at a position where you've looked at this a long time.
Right.
I love this about you. You grew up in church. You're a church girl. You love
Yes.
church. You're part of your church.
Yes.
You've talked to me more about
Yeah.
your church than you have your music, right? And
Which is a great thing.
it's an
Really,
amazing
yeah.
thing, right? And so what would you say to pastors, right? Sometimes we need to hear it from the other seat,
Yes,
right?
it's
Point
good.
of view. Your point of view, if you were talking to a bunch of pastors, what would you say to them to be like, what should I do if I feel like this is an unhealthy area of my
Yeah,
church?
this is such a passion for me, and I love that you're asking me about it because there is such a divide between pastors and their worship leaders. And it's a weird thing because that to me is one of the most important relationships in the church. You have to have a relationship and a friendship. You know, creatives, especially when it comes to worship leaders and band, and we're creatives, right?
Right.
We're a sensitive bunch. So we wear our hearts on our sleeve.
Yeah.
We get, we're looking for affirmation.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, a senior pastor, he is task oriented. He's got a thing. He's got a list of things that he wants done and accomplished. And I think that breakdown of just relationships. So from a pastoral side, taking a moment to build them up.
Right.
Build up your worship leader. Give them affirmation. Tell them they're doing a great job. But more than that, be in communication about what it is that you are hoping, what set vision, cast vision for the worship team. I think, for me as a worship pastor in a church, it is so troubling to me to go into places and see that a team never sits in a service, right? Like they sit in a green room,
There you go.
or they sit. How do you even know how to serve what your church is doing? What if God speaks differently in service 2 than he did in service 1? What if Holy Spirit's doing something a little bit different and you're not in tune to actually know what you're just kind of stuck on that this is what we're doing and we're just going through our motions? What would happen if all of a sudden there was this synergy between pastor and worship pastor and they were on the same page? And I think that part, as if your worship team is not sitting in your services, number one, pastors, change that. Change that about your culture, because they're not there to just do a job. They're actually a part of the family.
Right.
And I think making sure that they're included. Also, worship leader has been elevated to a place that so for worship pastors that might be listening, you are not the most important person in the church. And that part of elevated worship leader, elevated platform, elevated, we've kind of got this whole weird thing going on in the church of, we had the moment of elevated pastor, right? Rock star pastors,
Yes.
rock star. Now we have rock star worship leaders.
Right.
And it's just these moments where there's always going to be a vying for a spotlight. That does not belong in the church.
Right.
And I think that comes through relationship. That's not going to come through dictating. That comes through relationships. So to me, pastors, you should be meeting with, if you can't do it every week, at least every other week. That's how we do it. We have a Zoom if we can't meet in person, but every other week I'm sitting on a Zoom with my senior pastors, and they are casting vision for the worship pastor and for myself. And they want to hear about our team, and they want to hear about how it's going. And then they want to tell us, this is where church is going in this next month. This is what we're going to do. And I think that relationship and constant communication, that I have access to the senior pastor and the senior pastor has permission to speak in to the flow and how it's going, that is going to make the biggest difference. And it's birthed out of relationship.
I mean, people see our atmosphere. Obviously, I talked about Betsy and I and Tyron and my wife, and we started the church.
Yes.
And Brandy and Betsy having, it's family of relationships, and then the people that come along that are part of our team that have been here. Some, came at 19, 16, 17, growing up. Now we have this whole generational thing, right? So when we do, I always tell pastors they should watch Next Gen Weekend at Milestone. Don't watch my weekend when I preach. Watch on Labor Day weekend every year we do Next Gen.
Come on.
And we've got 7, 8, 9, 10, 15-year-olds leading
Come
and
on.
just doing amazing things. And so a lot of people get a better vision of our church by looking at that. But I can say this with all transparency, I mean, and validity, probably at least 44 to 46 Mondays of a calendar year for 22 years, I've sat with my worship team and leaders on Monday for lunch.
Yeah.
Yes.
For that amount of time.
That tells me everything too. That you can sense that in your team.
Exactly.
You can
Well,
sense
people
that.
want what you have, but they're not willing to do what you did.
Well, I can say it on your behalf because I'm in those meetings
Yeah.
with you. And it's not just you and Betsy, our worship leader, because she's the only one. It's
Yes.
young leaders in there. You're bringing them up
Yes.
along and you're communicating to them. Because I'm listening to you and I think what you're saying is so true. The lead pastor, the worship leader can begin to be a performer as opposed to a
Yes.
servant who's leading
Right.
the people.
Yes.
We're not performers who are doing the things that we're interested in. We're serving the people
Right.
on behalf of God. And you set that tone so the young leaders are coming up in that same context because that's the expectation that you set, but you're also modeling.
What do you think about another thing that I've noticed is, okay, so I came here to Dallas Fort Worth, 28 years old, start a church, and there's all these great churches, and I'm like, what am I doing here? In fact, I was driving down the boulevard, right here by our main Keller campus, and I noticed there's a lot of chicken. There's like 7 chicken places on one road.
street,
Okay, it's
yeah.
like Chicken
Okay,
Express,
yes.
Chick-fil-A, Zaxby's, and I just had this kind of God thing. I was like, there's a lot of chicken,
lot of
and I
chicken
felt like
here.
the Holy Spirit said, if you're going to build a church here, you need to know what chicken you're serving, right?
Wow.
And in the area of worship, because now the exposure to it, when I go to different churches and stuff, I sometimes feel like they're not singing the songs that meet the culture, and they're not serving the chicken to the people that are coming to get Chick-fil-A. They have now seen advertised this over here, and it's kind of become easier to have a messaging and a music and a culture that doesn't fit with your context.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yes, I think
it's like you're leading you're leading in Nashville, right? Nashville's different than where I'm at.
Totally.
Or like some worship leader in New York may need to have a different context. You're downtown. You guys built a church, in a downtown. I'm in a suburban context.
Yes.
What do you think about music choice for worship leaders? Like if you were leading a church, think about that worship leader out there. How do you make choices about the songs you do sing?
Well, I think number one, this does come back to me to worship leaders and worship teams that are not in a service. Because if you're not even going to the service, if you're not plugged into what God is doing, how do you even know the culture of the house that you're in?
Yeah.
Number two, I know it's really easy for me to say because I am in Nashville, with a bunch of incredible musicians. You're in Dallas-Fort Worth area. So many musicians and so many churches don't have that at their disposal. So they hire out, right? But when you're hiring just a professional to come in, then that is kind of what you're going to get. You know what I mean? You're going to get somebody that just kind of comes in, it's a gig.
It's a gig.
And it's not the same thing. But when you're actually in tune with the Holy Spirit, I would rather have less talent and heart that I know this person is pursuing God. They're not pursuing platform. They're actually pursuing God. So when they're not on a platform, they're in the Word. They're actually asking Holy Spirit to speak. And then all of a sudden they're growing, they're learning, they're having discernment, and they're in communication with the senior pastor who's like setting vision, casting vision, and they're moving together as one in unity. And I think that that's where you begin to learn, okay, this is going to work, and not every service is the same. You might be at some church, like I'll go into some churches that you're like, they have a contemporary service and then they have, so I know for this one, I'm going to do some hymns because my parents might be the kind of people that are in this room. And that's what's going to actually help them feel like they've entered into the presence of God. That's really our job, really, is to help people enter into the presence of God and to set the table for the Word of God to penetrate hearts.
That's good.
That's really
our
job.
We're not singing there for us to be impressive to everyone who follows us on Instagram.
No.
We're singing to glorify God and help the people connect with God, which is a totally different posture than, I want to look relevant or I want to look cool. It's I want to honor God. This is so good, right? And I think too, you hit on the hired hand. I think every pastor, if I were saying probably one of your biggest choices in the creative area, worship and all of it is, am I going to have hired hands or sons and daughters, right? So which path you choose will have a lot to do. And there could be some go, well, I like hired hands because I don't want to meet with them. And I want them just to do it. I don't want to talk to them. And I'll let them do their thing and as long as the music's good. But you're not going to have heart.
No.
A compromising heart if you do that. I've chosen, just as you guys, we choose not hired hand. We choose, you have to come, you have to go through the process, you go through the growth track, you have to become part of the house, right? And I thought one thing that was funny because you just got off your Christmas tour with Danny Goki. You're like, Danny Goki was serving in the parking lot.
Yeah, he was on parking team.
It's amazing.
I think that's amazing.
That's really rare. That doesn't happen everywhere.
No, but that is what that culture of saying, hey, I see your gift. And we're not being silly, right? We see that gift and and we want to not use your gift, but we want you to be able to use something God put in you. But also, I want to know that you're willing to serve. I want to know that your buy-in is to whatever the need is, right? I went to this church years ago, and you guys probably know the church. I was in this singing group called Truth years ago. And we went to this church in Palm Beach Gardens Christ Fellowship is what it was called back then, okay? And it was Tom Mullins. It was Todd, his dad.
He's like a spiritual father to me, Coach Tom.
I'm going to tell you a story.
He'll be here the next couple days.
I did not know that. I've not seen him in 30 years.
I was just with him the last 2 days.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
I will tell you the story, and you can tell him because it marked me forever.
Okay, good. We'll tell him.
we show up at the church and we're, when you're in truth, you did all the jobs.
Right.
So, I mean, didn't just get up to sing, you
Right.
set up everything, you had to clean
Yeah.
the bus, you had to do all the things. And we came into this church and the girls' job was to set up the merchandise table. So we're setting up the thing, and I was going to use the restroom and it was broken. The toilet was clogged and somebody was fixing the toilet. They said, give it a second, they're fixing the toilet. And out walks the pastor, and he was unclogging the toilet. And that, I was like, that's the senior pastor of this church that saw a need and said, I can fix that. I can step in and fix that. I think that posture, that heart posture of where can I step in? Not what do I want to do, but where can I serve? That heart posture changes everything.
And that filters down through the whole thing. If we
Totally.
love the people,
Yes.
then they love others,
Yes.
and you love your staff, then they love the people. It's just it's
Yes.
not complicated,
Yes,
right?
no.
But I want to ask both of you, because I think, on behalf of pastors, I think they feel a pressure because when we all started in ministry, you weren't being compared to every church out there. Now, because worship teams tour and people from a different church, you might be in a brand new startup church, but you go see this worship band, and now you're feeling like, well, why doesn't our church have that? And so pastors feel a pressure. What would you say to a pastor who's just starting out, who's feeling the pressure of like, we got to get our worship up on a level where someone would give us a look?
I think you hit the nail on the head. I'm going to choose heart over skill. I'll play a tape.
Yes.
Remember we used to play tapes?
Oh, yes.
We don't play tapes anymore, but I'll be like, I'll play a cassette. And Betsy
I'll
and
get a
I and some of
cassette
us
going.
along the
But
way, we would
that's
be like,
radical.
You know what? We'll just preach the Bible and we'll play a tape.
I sang the
If we-
backup tracks. That's
But you
that's
gotta
how
know
I
that's
sang
not
forever.
celebrated. That's a
You know what I mean?
radical
Yes.
approach.
Yes, but I think that heart of going, you said something. You said, how are people going to give us a look? Well, that first of all, why are we caring
Right.
if people are giving us a look, right? What are we doing to change the kingdom?
Yeah.
How
There
are
you
we
go.
serving wherever we
great.
are? How are we serving the community we're in, or the city we're in, or the neighborhood we're in?
Right. Right.
How are we serving that? Because honestly, that single mom that's just trying to keep going, she could care less whether your song's on the radio.
Yes.
She doesn't care.
Yes.
She doesn't care
She may
whether
not
you
even know.
No,
Yeah.
she doesn't care if you lead a song like Elevation.
Yeah.
She cares that you care about her. When she comes in,
Yeah.
she goes, gosh, this is giving me something that's going to make me make it through my week.
There
you
I
go.
can go through my week
There you
because
go.
of what's
Yeah.
happening in this house.
That's so good, but that's a missiological way to view the world. Most pastors are just thinking about what are other pastors doing and how do I get in that group, as opposed to,
Jesus, help us.
yeah.
Jesus,
Yeah.
help
Yes.
us, Lord.
Yeah.
Lord, help
Get us
us.
back,
But
Lord.
you're with the people. You know what
Yes.
that sounds
Yes.
like to the single mom, because
Yes.
you've obviously spent time with the single mom instead of just living amongst
Yes.
other artists who are just talking amongst themselves about what they find intriguing.
So the Lead to Win podcast, this is so good because again, we're reframing what winning is, right?
Yeah.
So the motto of the concept of winning that I did my doctoral dissertation on in the lives of men is that we all have a scoreboard.
Wow.
And the concept is that the worst thing in life is not to have less points on a scoreboard, but to light the scoreboard up and realize you played the wrong game.
Yeah.
You,
Wow.
you played the wrong game. So what we're saying to pastors is like,
Yes.
what is winning, right? And what you're saying is if you have a bunch of people who sing really well and the performance is good, but the heart's not there and
Yes.
sick, or even if I grow fast,
Right.
Yeah.
cancer grows fast,
Yes.
Wow.
right?
Wow, that's...
Fastest
Yes.
growing may not
True.
be the win.
Yes.
Right.
You follow
Yeah,
me?
I actually say that all the time, even about to artists for their career. Just
Right.
because you hit it big,
Yes.
I don't want to hit it overnight.
Right.
I want to still be here 25
So good.
years,
There you
30
go.
years. I want the
Yes.
longevity. I want the long game.
Yes.
I don't want that quick win. I
Right.
want the long win.
You want the
Yes.
long game win. I'm a long game person too. So for you, so you and I just spent time even talking about kids, right?
Yeah.
And your daughters and connecting because I'm
Yeah.
now a granddad and we got so you get together and you talk about stuff. That's the stuff you care
That's what
about.
you care about.
It's
Yes.
we probably had more people in church this weekend than we've ever had, probably,
Amazing.
like because you were
Yes.
here. But anyway, so but in essence, like I'm not anything different because there were a few thousand more people at church,
Yeah.
right? At the end of the day, I'm still a dad, a husband, a
Yes.
grandpa. I care about my team, the people that I'm helping, right? So what would you say to somebody, whether it's an artist, a pastor, a worship pastor, because I think we have to also speak to college students. We
Yes.
have
Yeah,
our
it's
college
really good.
students listening to this,
Yes.
young leaders feeling called. What would you look back and say to yourself, to your 20-year-old self
That's really good.
now? What would you say about what winning really is?
Wow. That's a really deep, heavy question because we think that we know the definition of what is winning, right? And I would say probably I would have said, like, if I get to do what I want to do and do it well and succeed at it, if I get to do what my passion is and succeed at it, then I'm winning.
Yeah.
Now I would say, just in maturity in the Lord, whatever I do, whether it's what I wanted to do or if it's what I didn't want to do, but I get to the end of it and I'm still sold out for Jesus and I have my integrity, then I feel like I've won.
Yeah.
But you know what? I would say you've always had that philosophy because I think when we talk to younger leaders, you've talked to me, we've been having conversation, you're talking about, well, I started doing this and then I served at this church and my husband was serving and we met. And you said you went to the first church, you're this Dove Award, Grammy Award. He said, they let me lead the choir.
I was so
which
excited.
you said now for people, because you and your husband lead the discipleship for worship leaders at your church, you make them sing in the choir.
Right.
And if they say, we won't start with choir,
then you don't get to do that. You're out.
That's a red flag.
It's a big flag.
It's a big red flag.
It's a big flag.
So to that young leader, I think it's even more so that narrative you said, if I can do what I love, if I do what I'm not called to that. I'm not good at this. And they think that there's this utopian world. You spent a lot of years being the choir leader, serving at this. I was listening to your story. You had a dream to do what you do, which God gives dreams.
Yes.
But you served as a choir. You said you were cleaning the bus. You were doing so that young leader, what do you say to them? Like, you have to be, it's an indication of whether you can handle that if you're willing to do it.
And I want to be careful not to speak about a generation as a whole because my daughters who may listen to this, my twin daughters are 17 and it's a real hot button for them.
I got you.
When people speak against their generation. They're like, why does everybody say that about our generation? They don't even know me. This generation is blah, blah, blah. And I think that automatically makes us seem old when I go, this generation is. But with that being said, I do think that we have, as a musician, as a creative, I'm thinking we've got like a microwave mentality of get on a American Idol and then you can be a star. Get on The Voice and you can do whatever. Get on YouTube. Get on TikTok. And all of a sudden you have millions of followers and brand deals. And so you don't actually have to put in the work. You just got to get something viral, And then if it doesn't go viral, then it's just kind of like, well, people don't have the same grit. Because they don't have that modeled for them. I think that I do believe God gives dreams, and I believe that He puts passions in us that He wants us to follow. But what is if it comes easy, if it didn't cost you anything, then why were you going to stick with it? It cost me to do this. I had to take jobs I didn't want to do and still pursue the thing that God put in my heart. I had to go through a record deal and then it went out of business, and then I got another record deal and then it went out of business, and I was like, actually maybe I was supposed to be a school teacher after all. And then I got another record. You have to have that, my husband says no plan B. If you have a plan B, you'll do it. You have to have a plan A, and you have to go, God, this is my plan A, but whatever I have to do to work hard to continue getting me to plan A, that's the part is we kind of want something quick and easy and overnight, but that does not build in you what it takes to go the distance. And I can literally look back and say, goodness, the artists that came out when I start, none of them are even in music anymore, and I thank God that 25 years in, I'm still getting to do it. I'm still getting to make music, and I feel grateful for it. But it wasn't just by accident.
Yeah.
You're using words. You're talking about concepts like faithfulness,
Yes.
stewardship,
Yes.
character in like the secret place. And I don't think that's and to your daughter's credit, that's not a generational problem.
No.
That's a human
Yes.
problem.
It's a
Human
human
beings
problem.
want
Yes.
things instantly. They
Yes.
just have more avenues than probably we had when we started. And creatives want to be able to immediately, because they've been told. And a lot of well-intended,
Yes.
well-meaning parents and teachers, and maybe even
Yes.
us, have told them, follow your dreams and follow what you're passionate about. So if they don't feel direct passion to something, they're like, I'm not going to do that.
Right.
Because they're not appreciating, like we had to learn a lot of ways. And like you said, stewardship, faithfulness, grit, doing things
Yes.
that you didn't choose to do because of the development process.
Well, and I think too, sometimes, at least when I grew up, and I don't know what it was like for you guys, but I got really spooked out by the will of God. I thought I was going to make a mistake. So I was scared to
Yes.
do
Right.
certain things.
Right.
Because I was like, well, I hear all the time, and I think about young leaders or young people who might be
Right.
listening to this that are
Right.
so afraid
Right.
of making the wrong decision.
Yes.
So they're actually paralyzed
Yes.
Paralyzed.
by
Sure.
which way to go. I even think about that right now about one of my daughters who's kind of paralyzed about, well, I don't really know what to, and it feels like such a big decision, and I don't know. The truth is, God is actually going to work his will out.
So
Whatever
good.
you do,
So good.
he's going to work his
Yes.
will
Right.
out as whatever it is that you're doing. It's
Yes.
not a destination or one thing or one place. It's a lifestyle he's
Well, he
working out.
says in Romans 12, right? I urge you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies
Yes.
of God. So he will work it out
Yes.
if you're submitted to
Submitted.
him.
Right.
If you'll
Present
submit,
yourself as a
and you'll
living
say,
sacrifice.
if you'll be a willing
Yes.
living sacrifice, then he
Yes.
will prove
He
out his
will.
acceptable good
Yes.
and will.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so
Yeah.
I think you're right. I mean, we also, in our time, we didn't have as many options
didn't.
available
Right.
in our decision process.
Right.
So now you kind of have a way to, look and see and analyze. And a lot of back in the old, you just kind of like whatever step was available.
Yes.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? It's
Yes.
But
like-
when you do say, okay, so I am going to take that step, whatever that passion is
Right.
that God's put in you, and I'm going to take that step, it also might mean that you have to get a job at Starbucks.
Right.
Which
or
is
you have to
okay.
get a job or I worked at Medicare when I first moved to Nashville. I didn't like to do accounts payable, but it turns out I could do it.
Sure.
Yeah.
And it helped me pay my bills. I
Yes.
wasn't going to become an artist and I had to actually get a job
Right.
and
So
work
good.
at something I didn't love.
Right.
But whatever you're doing, work at it with all of your heart,
Yeah.
as for God,
As
not
unto
for
the
man.
Lord. There you go.
It's really
and
good.
when you just choose wherever you are, work at it with all of your heart, God is actually going to work it out. It's not
Yeah.
like some magic thing, but when you are faithful, he will
So
prove
good.
himself faithful to you.
It's so good. It's like you're talking about the artist that you started out with. Sometimes doing well initially, being promoted beyond the character you have to sustain
Yes.
it is what we all want, but it's not what we need. It doesn't help
Exactly.
us in the
No,
long run.
No.
So what do you, just kind of wrapping up and thinking a minute, what are you currently passionate and kind of what do you see for the next few years? What do you see for church, for music? Is there things God's been showing you? What are you passionate? What do we see on the horizon? Give us some of your
it's
thoughts.
funny. I really do think that there is currently a call, and first of all, I think that God is weeding some stuff out. And you can just see that in general in just the church at large,
Right.
where we've kind of been distracted. No matter who you are, what you believe, what side of whatever you're on,
Right.
Jesus is like, I'm still the center.
There you go.
I'm still the center.
There you go.
And I think that you can feel this moment that's happening where in the American church especially, God's been cleaning house
Yeah.
for his glory and for our good.
Yeah.
And I think that I can sense that in worship music as well. This like this elevating of worship leader, of worship business, of worship. God's like, he's turning over tables, and you can
Yeah.
kind of feel that like,
Yeah.
I've let this go,
Yeah.
but now enough is enough. And this, so when you say, I don't think you understand what that means to me, to have you say Jesus has been at the center when you're doing that, because that is what I feel God is speaking, is
Yeah.
that there's coming a moment where Jesus is coming back to
Yeah.
the center.
So
And
good.
he's always been there.
Yeah.
We haven't always
Right.
realized that he's still
Right.
right there at the center. And I feel like that returning in our songwriting,
Yeah.
in our churches, in our focus
Yeah.
as the church. I'm not talking about just me, I'm talking about the church at large.
Right.
a return to holiness,
Yeah.
a return to holy living, a return
Yeah.
to the things that that matter, remembering the role of pastor and servant
Right,
leader. We
right.
somehow got him out of order. We
Right.
put it at number one.
Yeah.
And really it's
Yeah.
we're all in this to serve
Yes.
Christ. And I feel like that is actually what God is speaking.
I love
That
it.
return to
That's so good.
servanthood.
Isn't there, I feel this kind of move toward authenticity,
Yes.
less perform.
Less
Not every, we have to have, there is a
Yes.
production
Yes.
element, right? Because
Yes.
we used amplified sound and
Yeah.
whatever, and this has lights
Well,
and whatever.
and we have people right now that
Yes.
people can't see, but
That are
they're
helping
behind
us.
a
They're helping
camera and they're helping. We couldn't do
Right.
it without them.
To make
right?
it
We
more
need-
Exactly.
enjoyable
Yes.
experience.
all that.
Yeah.
Yes.
But the if I might say, not meaning to, but where it maybe becomes disingenuous or plastic
Yes.
or sort of the form
Yeah.
Right.
without the spirit and
Yes.
heart. I think I sense that
Yes.
that's I don't know, people, just even
Yes.
people that they're hungry for
Yeah.
genuine,
Less show.
real God, less
Yeah.
show. And I know this weekend, I don't know if you feel it, but
Yes.
we're having a few days of focus and prayer
Yes.
and worship, and the people are hungry.
Hungry. That's.
Yeah.
I think that is what I would say. I felt it here. I felt it everywhere in this last year where I went. There's a hunger.
Yes.
In people for the real encounter with the real Jesus.
so
it's,
true.
It's not just about a church or showing up somewhere or a religion, or it's like we want something real.
Yeah.
And you can feel that, and you can definitely feel the hunger in your people here.
Thank you for coming and investing in us.
Thank
you
you
for
for
everything you
having
do.
me.
Yeah.
And it's just been great to, I think
thank
and
you.
hope and pray even your words will inspire. Who knows that there's a future generation
Yeah.
out there. There's maybe some pastors and that worship part of it is a big part. As you said, it's not the most important part. If this time together could bring some unity and some clarity and help churches, I think it's all worth it.
Well, and I thank you just in sitting here for these few moments in this podcast. There's a lot of podcasts on leadership and a lot of pastors who are doing podcasts, but what you can sense that you're doing is you're wanting to instruct leaders with that heart for Christ, that authentic heart, and that component is. You're not a formula.
Yeah.
And I really,
you.
I appreciate and respect that. Thank you for not coming with formula. Thank you for coming with Jesus.
Yeah.
I really
Thank you so
appreciate
much.
that.
Well, on behalf of our team, I want to thank you guys both for this amazing conversation. I learned a lot, and I know you helped all of us as leaders learn how to win in the things that matter most, and so we're so grateful for both of you taking the time to do this. We thank you guys for joining us. We look forward to seeing you on our next episode.